Mech pilots, online. BattleTech manuals, online. Long-term memory, offline. All systems bungled. Initiating BungleTech podcast.
In our 28th deployment of BungleTech, my spheroid co-host Michael and I are joined by Sean Murry from SARNA as we discuss bad mechs in our primary topic segment. Also, we talk about a few rule mistakes Sean has been making on the Alpha Strike board in our Rule Check Discovery segment. And in our Extraordinary Proclamation, we share a few exciting announcements regarding the Global Campaign Initiative and welcome a few new members to our clan. MechWarriors, load those cluster LBX rounds as quickly as you can, cause today we're shooting from the hip.
Bonus objective. Extraordinary Proclamation. Initiating.
Honorable MechWarriors, I'm excited to share a few quick updates about the global campaign. The first mission of the global campaign has now been released, and on top of this, we've made some updates to the operation manual and have now released version 1.1. These updates include some minor wording clarifications to increase clarity, obviously, the adding of an OP4 paint guide, an OP4 common mech table to assist you in building forces, and we've added more questions and answers to the FAQ. You can find both the Mission Brief 1 and the Operations Manual version 1.1 on our Patreon linked in the show description, and of course, publicly accessible to you. Also, because of a bungle of communications on our end, perhaps my end, we accidentally planned more missions than we promised. This means you can expect a bonus mission from what has been previously communicated. The Global Campaign Initiative 2025 will now be delivering 10 total missions instead of 9. Selah. And now, a quick update from our con.
Honorable brothers and sisters of Clan Kodama, it has been a grand month for us. Your persistence, your power, your zeal has brought us bounty beyond expectation. MechWarrior Slurski Lispers has returned to us from the mire of Galatea after battling their way through many so-called MechWarriors. And now, they stand before us presenting bondspersons of worth, eager to join our venerable clan. Bondsperson It's-Whatevan, Offensive Titan, and Rob Carpenter. Your new life starts now. A life of challenge, a life of honor, and a life of victory. Slurski, well done in your mission. You return in victory. And to you, It's-Whatevan, Offensive Titan, and Rob Carpenter, I see it in your eyes. You will be a strong addition to the clan in whatever role we find you fitting. I also bring news of the results of a recent trial of possession against Clan Snow Raven. Through this encounter, we have claimed the skilled aerospace pilot Canaan McKenna. We have transferred Canaan into a MechWarrior role until a time in which we can build our aerospace capacity, leveraging their keen knowledge, of course. I say to you, truthfully, clan fellows, I can think of nothing more terrifying than flying space Kodama. Loremaster RetroLazer, log this month in our remembrance as a bounty for our future. Now, to you all, new and old, remember always, clan strong together!
Primary objective. Podcast topic segment. Initiating.
Hello, MechWarriors, and welcome to episode 28 of BungleTech, a BattleTech podcast. Today is a special day, like last month's special day, but this is a specialer day because we have a specialist guest With me and this guest is my ever sensual co-host, Michael. Please, Michael, say hello.
Hello.
And the guest that you've been hyperventilating as soon as I mentioned it, as soon as I said specialerist, and it is the beautiful Sean Murry, not to be confused with the ugly Sean Murray. No, it is the beautiful Sean Murry.
Oh, hi.
From SARNA is here. Hello, Sean.
Hi, how's it going?
Really good. Thank you so much for being brave enough to join us on our podcast.
No one ever learns.
Long-time listener, first-time caller, I guess?
Well, we are honored by your listening, and I would like to say that I'm a long-time reader of your words. So
Thank you.
there is some synergistic vibing going on.
That's what I call every single time I hop in bed.
Synergistic vibing.
We keep it chill.
So, Sean, for people, the people out there that don't know who you are, who live in a smaller world than some, perhaps actually in a bigger world because they don't know who you are and they aren't reading BattleTech stuff. Perhaps they're worried about real world problems, not BattleTech problems. Regardless, dude, who the heck are you?
I'm Sean, the SARNA news guy. That's how I introduce myself.
Very understated.
Can you give us in a little more oomph?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm
Yeah.
the sort of one pony show that deals with all the anything that gets posted into the news section of SARNA, the BattleTech wiki. For those of you who are unaware, SARNA is, I'm not sure if it's the longest running, but it's certainly the largest BattleTech wiki that provides you with all the information you could ever hope to have regarding lore, regarding where planets are in the universe. Not doing as many rules anymore, and that's something you can read about in one of my most recent interviews with some of the wiki admins. But generally, if there's questions you have regarding BattleTech, your first stop should be SARNA. Then off to the side, or depending on how you orient your screen, the top, there's a little button called News, and if you click there, that's where you'll find me.
On the little button called News, Sean Murry from SARNA. Ooh.
And what is SARNA news?
Well, the main point is perhaps in the name, the news. We talk a lot about BattleTech news. Anything that has to do with the world of BattleTech, whether that is new product releases, books, new video games. I do a perusal of the BattleTech community online to find, great art or fan projects or anything that I just think is cool and should be shared with a wider audience. There's also interviews with the folks who make BattleTech, whether that is developers at PGI working on MechWarrior 5, or it's developers at CGL who are making the BattleTech board game. Yeah, and occasionally we'll have some other stuff like product reviews, and of course the ongoing Bad Mechs series.
Much beloved.
I beloved it.
You've been in BattleTech for a while. You do a ton for the community. But what's your origin story? How'd you start and how'd you end up in it?
My first dose of BattleTech was way back in middle school. It was MechWarrior 2, and a friend of mine just came to school with this cool manual about, look at all these cool mechs that are in this video game. And I was like, I've never heard of that. It's because it's a computer game. So then I had to bug my parents for a computer to download this game. And eventually I, played MechWarrior 2 literally to death. And then I didn't get more into BattleTech until I found the first novel when I was maybe a teenager. We did some flying as kids, as a family, so I needed something to kind of while away the hours on a plane. So read BattleTech books, and then after that, because now I'm a teenager, I'm going to the mall more often. There was the big playing card craze of the '90s.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, Magic was my thing, but also BattleTech had a card game, and I really loved that card game too. me and my friends played the heck out of BattleTech, the trading card game. I still have those cards tucked away in a box somewhere.
Dude, if you ever come down to Calgary, we're going to play some BattleTech TCG. Or if I come to Ontario, because I have thousands of cards too, and I love the BattleTech TCG. It's such a good game. Actually, I'm meeting up with people next weekend to play it, as a matter of
Oh,
fact.
wow. All right, cool. I mean, I still have some decks. I don't know if they're good for the meta or whatever, but they'll play.
The bleeding edge BattleTech TCG
Oh, yeah. The meta that has not changed since like 30 years.
Well, have you seen the work that Travis from Renegade HPG has done on his like BattleTech sort of TCG revival project?
I have, actually, and I have a bunch of his cards because he released a lot of those like cards as just like the print images, and I have contacted the card printing store online and I was like, can you print these? And so I've got like a bunch of those cards printed. Some of those cards are ridiculous and lean into the most broken aspects of the BattleTech card game, like the Locust. Like there are a couple variants of the Locust that you can build that are free if you have logistics, and also you give it extra deployments. So like the Swarm deck strategy, which if I recall was mostly our vehicles in BattleTech's heyday, it's gotten so much worse with all these Locusts that you can do now. I think that's one of the decks I have, so I could unleash that on you.
I'm excited to have it unleashed. Yeah, he's done some good stuff, and yeah, that game has a lot of like broken. Yep. But I love it. Like I find like it's a very fun game to play from a thematic perspective. You can really build decks that feel very consistent with the lore of the BattleTech universe, win or lose.
And I gotta say, that's a bit of an unusual route into the BattleTech. Like, played MechWarrior as a kid. Lots of people played MechWarrior as a kid. Read the books as a kid. I think that's probably less common. I don't know, like, I guess there are like stompy mechs on the cover, but there's a lot of like boring politics and stuff. I didn't realize that it had like a lot of appeal to children. And then you played the BattleTech TCG.
Yeah. You know what? As a teenager, we did eventually, like my friends and also my brother, who's also really into BattleTech, we did come across the board game eventually. And we had like, I think I still have that 3rd edition BattleTech book or box set. And like, we got it. We got where the mechs come from and how the damage works, because it's all kind of taken verbatim to the video game. The issue we had with it, though, is that it was really complex and playing a single game took all day.
We know about that. Yes, they still take all day.
So that still hasn't gotten any better.
Whether you're a teenager learning the rules or you're playing with Nathan, still takes all day.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear.
And we enjoy every second of it.
Every juicy second of it.
You, in particular, Michael, enjoy. Say it, Michael. Say it for the listeners so they know.
I love them. I love our long games. They make me grateful for so many things.
So, Sean, what kept you in BattleTech then? And how do you enjoy it today? I know you're now an Alpha Strike player.
Yep.
How else do you enjoy it? I mean, obviously, like, doing the news is an act of love.
I appreciate that.
It's pretty apparent to me, at least, that you're scouring the community looking for cool things. And I always feel like you're truly giving the fans a shout out. That's what it feels like in all the news articles. Like, it really feels like you are appreciating the BattleTech love that is out there and the diversity of it.
Absolutely. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find, anything that catches my eye and trying to share that with the wider audience to kind of just keep BattleTech alive and growing and well.
And is that sort of like your biggest like involvement? Like how much, you play Alpha Strike, you're going to break out the TCG at least once when you come to Calgary, and you write the news. I assume that's a fair
I mean, that's
chunk,
a fair chunk, but like what kept me coming back over the years was definitely the video games. Like I played MechWarrior 2, played MechWarrior 3, MechWarrior 4. There was all the DLC for that, or the standalone Mercenaries game, which I played the heck out of that as well. There was Mech Commander, Mech Commander 2, Mech Commander Gold. Then there was MechWarrior Online, did that for a long time. And then MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries, did a bunch of that. I've played that a bunch of times. One time like straight through, and then one time modded to heck. And most recently, MechWarrior 5 Clans. I've played that once by myself and once with a friend. It was great both times. I'm looking forward to whenever they get the new game plus added to the game, because I think that would be more than enough reason for me to go back and play it again, just so I can unlock every upgrade. So yeah, what kept me going was definitely the video games. Although Alpha Strike is a small but growing part of my BattleTech obsession. I do have a lot of minis now.
Nice. Obsession is the right word for it, I'd say. Obsession is the healthy word for
Absolutely.
it. I'd even go further to say.
That's what my therapist says.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm fist pumping in the air right now. Obsession! Yeah. You've been on this BattleTech journey, experienced a variety of things. You're really embedded in the community. But how did you actually first get involved with SARNA?
So I'd known about SARNA for a long time, of course, because SARNA always has like databases, not just for BattleTech, the classic game, but also for its video games. Like if you want to look up mission logs, you can find those on SARNA. And it was also a really good resource for the card game. Oh, and I also forgot about MechWarrior Dark Age. There was a brief stint in college where I thought, man, this is much cooler than the classic tabletop game if I don't actually have to paint any of these stupid things, and I can play them literally on the kitchen table and use salt shakers as terrain. That was cool, although unfortunately my friend group in university did not keep up with that game for fairly long.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, what got me to work for SARNA is I had recently quit my job, which I hated, so that's why I quit. And I was looking to kind of find a new career. And SARNA, I was following them on Twitter, and Nick, the guy who runs SARNA, who's, I guess you can call him my editor-in-chief, he put out a call saying that they're looking for contributors. And I literally wasn't doing anything that day, so I answered it. And I think I wrote an article. I don't even remember what it was about at this point. It was just like, because I didn't have a portfolio, I had literally nothing at that point.
You were changing careers.
I was changing careers. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I had to show this guy something that, yes, I can write English good. So I created a fake article and just sent it to him, and he's like, yeah, this is actually exactly what we want. You're hired.
Just like that.
Just like that. So I think in the earliest days, it wasn't even necessarily a news roundup. I was just posting whatever news stories I found, like through whenever I found them. Eventually it got to the point where there was just too much news, or like it would just be like a post per day, and that's just too much, because a lot of people don't necessarily go to the SARNA news site, like on the actual wiki. They will wait for the SARNA News Digest, which is basically just an emailing list. And having one of those every day will just get us caught in a spam filter. So we kind of changed it to be once a month. Yeah, that's I've just been doing that ever since.
And you sort of mentioned this, but how many people are there contributing to SARNA News?
When I say it's a one pony show, it is mostly me. Although we are talking with some of the wiki admins that we're going to maybe get some more opinion pieces, just because it's dominated by everything that I write there right now.
And sort of what is it that you think that, like, what's the value of it? Like I've always heard, from people we've talked to, like, positive buzz about, I mean, SARNA is obviously like an institution, but SARNA News and a lot of the like regular segments there, people like it. I think we even in our like local Discord, we have a feed set up to SARNA News. So that's where we get our BattleTech updates from.
That's so nice. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think it's important. What do you think SARNA News brings to the community?
Well, I think it brings community. Like it helps kind of cement the community together. So, everybody knows what's happening. Everybody can communicate with each other. It allows for that kind of cross-pollination. Like a lot of and I'm trying to add more of them. There's a lot of events that go into the newsletter, and that lets people know maybe not necessarily what's going on in their specific locale, but like these events are happening. Also, if you want to maybe run an event or attend an event, you know where to travel to. If you want to advertise for that event, you can contact me. Not necessarily you're going to find these kinds of updates from mainstream or other, like, even gamer outlets. So SARNA kind of gives you that very specific niche news that you're not going to necessarily get anywhere else.
And I think that's like super important. Nathan and I have talked with tons of people here, but like one of the big things that has kept BattleTech going for honestly a really long time to still be going strong as a franchise, and through like some really hard patches and some good patches, and it really seems to be on the upswing right now. And like a huge thing that carried it through is the community. It's how many people are so engaged. And so yeah, it's awesome to have this like channel that you can just help share a little bit about that, at least the highest profile stuff, and then diving down into some of the weird little stuff sometimes.
Yeah, it's absolutely about driving that engagement, making sure people are aware that this is a vibrant community that is continually growing.
So what are your favorite things to write about when you're on SARNA? You're bringing the joy of BattleTech to the legions of poor dirt farmers of the world. What's your favorite stuff to write
Honestly,
about?
I really like providing color commentary for just really cool art pieces, because there's a lot of them out there.
Nice.
And I don't really write a lot for them. Like, I think a lot of the art speaks for itself, and me just adding words does nothing to enhance it in any way. But I do like being able to comment on people's art, even if it's just like one or two sentences. And of course, I always love posting anything about new products, especially video games. I mean, I'm still a huge gamer, and I will be very excited for any new video game announcement or news. That will definitely bring me the most joy. And new product announcements as well. I was very excited to hear about BattleTech Aces, and I'm still very excited to hear when that is going to eventually be released. So new product releases, new game news, and just art.
I think art especially is one of those things that you might not see if you're not going out and looking for it specifically. So it's nice to have a little place to just highlight a little bit of it and show it off, because there's tons of talented people in the community, and so it's cool to just see a little bit about people who are.
Yeah, there is so much. There have been more than one news roundups where like I have had to pick and choose what art I put in it, because there were just so many pieces released that month that if I were to include them all, it would be like a 6,000 word email that just goes on for pages and pages of all the cool art. So
Need a SARNA Instagram to go with the SARNA news.
Man, we should do that. Why don't we do that?
just a feed of art.
Do that.
Frantically scribbles notes.
On that topic, then, that sounds like quite the challenge. What is the most challenging thing about your role at SARNA?
I guess I would say setting like deadlines, because it is about, well, we do have one obvious deadline, and that's getting the news blast out before the end of the month. But everything else is kind of whenever I can get to it, in addition to the day job, which can sometimes push things back a little bit further than they should. For example, the most recent interview that was supposed to be up in February did not come out until the very end of February, or even the beginning of March. I forget. When did I put the Demon interview up? I'm going to go to the actual page because I'm good at this. Yeah, actually just last week. So that was supposed to be a preview of what projects SARNA has going in 2025, and that got out a little bit late because, life happened. So I'm going to say sticking to my own self-imposed deadlines.
Yeah, and especially for something sort of like community driven like this, you're not exactly working for like a newspaper or a magazine or something. It really is like the reason it's great is what you bring to it. And so you gotta be a little bit hard on yourself. You gotta make sure you're keeping up the output that you want to have, or it'll just sort of trickle away, I guess.
mean, there have definitely been times where I've worked Sundays or weekends just to make sure that I have something out. Yeah.
Michael and I and our self-imposed deadlines and schedules for this podcast as well are an ever enjoyable challenge.
Yeah, I have the advantage of Nathan can tell me when the deadlines are. And so, I have a little bit of an external force acting on me, but Nathan is my rock.
Except when I forget. Like I forgot last month. I was like, and you're like, "Hey, when are we going to record?" I'm like, "Oh my god, it's what day is it?" Yeah, that's tough. I can totally relate to that. Well, on the topic of one of your acts of love to the BattleTech community, I want to talk about the Bad Mechs article series. I've been privileged to be invited by you to do a few narrations for the series. Thank you for including me on that. And I've always really, really enjoyed them and find them very, very fun. So I want to talk a lot about it, especially considering in a few episodes ago, Michael proclaimed that the Shadowhawk was the platonic ideal of a mech. And I think one of the most... Yeah.
I vaguely remember saying that. Yes,
that's the term you use. And I think the most recent article or the previous one was the Shadowhawk one, which we narrated, which actually Michael contributed his voice to that. He was the nerd in the classroom. That's right. It was great. It was beautiful. So I want to talk about this article series because I love it. First, how did it start? And why did you feel the world needed it, man? Why were you like waking up in the middle of the night covered in sweat, being like, this truth must be told?
Okay, so first of all, I really just wanted to share my personal love of Bad Mechs with the world, because the Bad Mechs are the best mechs. I have never gotten excited about something like a Timberwolf or a Direwolf. These are these iconic, terrifying mechs that are just really good at beating your face in and are, I mean, arguable about the Atlas, but seem optimized to exactly that task. They're the least exciting things about the game to me. What I've always much preferred are the weird and wacky, so I would much rather use something like the Nova. And this even happened in MechWarrior 5 Clans. I would much prefer using the Summoner to the Timberwolf, even when I'm doing missions that realistically I should be in that Timberwolf, because otherwise I'm going to get murdered. But the other reason why I wanted to do this series was so I could get Eldon to draw really silly pictures of mechs.
There's two big
those
reasons.
are the two
Mission
big
accomplished.
ones. I wanted Eldon Cowger. He's the artist who does the Bad Mech series. He's done it since the beginning. He's a really fantastic artist. He does a lot of work officially for CGL. He also does a lot of work for unofficial fan projects like Tex Talks BattleTechs and the most recent Pride anthology. He's an excellent artist, and I think especially he's really good at drawing goofy things as well, like goofy versions of mechs. So when I approached him, I was like, I'm not going to be like giving you a lot of art direction for any of these because I'm not an artist and I don't know what I would tell you to do anyway. I'm just going to give you a description of the mech, and I want you to make something funny out of it. And he has nailed it every time for like, I think, I don't know how long I've been doing this, 3 years-ish? I think so.
You've been at it for a while.
A little bit. And he's never let me down, and I don't expect him to ever to.
The fact that you just got to the Shadowhawk is funny too, through this series. Like, that one was, man, must have been on that list for a while of considerations.
Yeah, I try and make sure that there's kind of like a variety of things you really are expecting, but just haven't shown up yet in the order. and things that are kind of unexpected or not something you would traditionally think of as bad.
Yeah, and so going back to your first reason, that's like really speaks to me. I'm a huge proponent of things that are bad, and so like I love the Bad Mech series because I don't know, it's there's so many things about it, and you know each of the Bad Mechs is sort of a bit different to talk about, but like it's I think it's really important to the broader BattleTech universe. Not, you know, when you just focus on like the video games, you know, like you say, well, I should be playing a Timberwolf. When you're just playing the tabletop, yeah, you should be, you know, driving medium laser boats all the time. But like that makes the universe feel alive is in a big part, I think, because there are so many bad mechs.
Yeah, and so many reasons for there to be bad mechs too.
When you're picking, like, what do you go looking for? How do you pick what is a bad mech worthy of your? I assume you have a giant list on your wall.
I mean, it's not on my wall, but yes, I do have a giant list, and there are a couple of broad categories for what makes a bad mech. The easiest one is the lore. If the lore says a mech is bad, then the mech is bad. So, what a good example of that would have been Blackjack, that the lore said it had a bad reputation for a long time, so it's bad. I think it's also bad for other reasons, but the other those other reasons being like the rules say, like the game rules say that it's inefficient in some way. For example, the Blackjack you just said, it has AC2s. AC2s are kind of the worst freaking gun you could use in BattleTech, period. There is almost never any reason to run this weapon. It is inefficient in the extreme, and having two of them is really bad, especially on a mech that's only 45 tons. Can't actually do a lot with what it has. So yeah, the Blackjack is really bad. The other categories include mechs that aren't really bad per se, but are bad because of the way they're used in game. Like a good example, I think this will probably be out by the time this podcast goes to air. I'm going to be doing the Cougar next. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with the Cougar. It is a glass cannon. It has guns for days, guns that will outpace most medium mechs.
Seems like exactly the sort of thing that should be popular on the table for a certain type of player.
But what makes the Cougar, I think, bad is because it's so vulnerable. It is slow. It has light armor, especially for a mech of that speed and it being a light mech. So any reasonable player who sees a Cougar will immediately target that Cougar because it's the easiest way to remove a lot of firepower. So that's another reason for a mech to be bad. And sometimes mechs are just kind of weird looking.
How dare
that
you?
is true. That is true. Yes. I never thought about categorizing them as bad because they looked weird, but you know, fair enough. You do you.
No, it's the Valley Girl classification. He's so bad. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. We purposely had when I was discussing this with Nick, we purposely made the definition of what a bad mech was to be as broad as possible so that we could use as many mechs as possible and discuss as many mechs as possible. So that's why, you know, maybe not everybody will agree with every single choice that has been made, but every single bad mech will at least have an argument as to why it's bad.
Maybe all mechs are bad in their own way.
Wait a minute. War is bad. Oh my God. This has been this whole pacifist argument for you all along. And no one's been getting it. You just are about pacifism in the BattleTech universe.
My favorite era
that's beautiful,
was the
Sean.
height of the Republic when everybody was just giving their mechs away.
Dude, mind is blown. You've been misunderstanding it all along. Well, one thing like what I'm hearing when you talk about bad mechs is it's funny because like really what you mean is non-optimal mechs and or something that is non-desirable mechs. But your write-ups are always very consistently fair. They showcase like the evolution of the mech, the different variants, the intention of the design, what its strengths were, what its weaknesses were. I find the articles to be a very neutral and fair and academic assessment of the mech, to be honest. And despite the title Bad Mech, it doesn't feel like someone's pointing a finger at that mech calling it bad boy, bad boy. It's more of just like, this mech is a C grade mech in this certain situation. It got a C. You can still use it on the battlefield, but it gets a C.
Some mechs get C's, some mechs get D's, some mechs get F's.
Let's not talk about the F's.
The irredeemable bunch.
Can I request that you do a Bad Mech series on the Volk? Because
okay,
the Volk. It is an experimental Solaris sort of mech that has lasers on its face, and I love how it looks, and really I just want to see art of this mech. And I'm pretty sure this mech would have failed for many reasons.
Okay.
But man, the Volk, I love that. That is my favorite weird mech that I've seen.
Yeah, I've just looked this up. What is going on with this mech? It has 2 lances. It has a non-standard speed listing in SARNA. Like 76 is not something I expect. Like 76 kilometers per hour is not something I see for when we're talking about a either 4.6 or 5.8 movement profile. A double XL engine.
I think,
okay.
Lasers on its face. Torso-mounted cockpit.
Yep.
Lasers on its face.
Lasers are what matter on the face. Is laser face. It's a laser face mech.
Sure.
I love it. Volk.
It's also like
put it on the
30
list.
million C-bills and it's 45 tons. You're paying a lot for those laser face.
You're sending a message.
That's the Solaris 7, that's the inflation of things. People are just putting stuff, ER lasers when they don't need them. Why do you need ER lasers when you're going up to lance someone?
I mean, they've got to do something while you're running up to the guy to lance them. But this, to me, looks like it's going to be sort of similar to the Hatchet Man in that you're kind of a melee guy, but you're also not fast enough to be a melee guy. So, yeah, okay, I'll add this to the list.
Yeah.
Live on air Bad Mech reaction.
I've yet to put that one on the table, but oh boy, am I excited to. And there's no 3D model of it or anything like that. Oh, I wish I could get like a model of the Volk, man.
Wow, no one ever modeled this, really.
There's, I think, a reason for that. Just look at it. It's like a Cthulhian-looking mech to me. That's why I probably like it. It's the most like Eldritch-styled mech I can imagine. The lasers look like tentacles almost coming out of the face.
Yeah, I could see that.
So, anyhow, why are bad mechs important for BattleTech? You sort of touched on it.
I think bad mechs are important because they're the mechs with the most character. A good mech is usually, all good mechs are good in kind of the same way. There's homogeneity. But bad mechs, there's a ton of variety. You can be too slow, you can be too hot, you can have the weird lasers for your face. You could have ammunition where you really shouldn't. You could have not enough weapons. I think they're the Vulcan I think it's the Vulcan has like a half-ton spare just for a cargo slot. So you can just pick something up and like carry your beer with you into combat. You could be way too huge for your speed and have an engine that's like 60% of your mass requirement. The variety comes from bad mechs, and that's why I love them.
And I think that they are lovable because of that. And I feel like probably most particularly older BattleTech players are going to have some mech that like they really like. They know it's bad, and you kind of you it's not even that you like it in spite of it being bad, but you like it kind of because it is bad. It does have that character. It's got something for you to latch on to. You love having the friggin' half-ton cargo rack on the back.
Or you love just being that kamikaze charger player who runs at the enemy heedless of the damage they're taking, because if you manage to get your fist through somebody's cockpit, it just makes your game.
And yeah, maybe most games you aren't as impactful as you could be for the battle value you spend, but the games that you do, you're going to remember.
And even the games that you fail utterly are still kind of memorable.
Yeah. Definitely. We more than many, I feel that we at BungleTech Inc. are prepared to talk about how failures can be fun.
I find that, like with me, for example, so many things make me connect to a mech, but like one of them is the aesthetics of a mech for sure. But also, like, if a mech, winning with a bad mech feels a lot better. And it's funny, when you released the Shadowhawk article, I just randomly stumbled upon a post in BattleTech Discord and MechBag Discord in which someone was sharing this with Denim Hardman, who's, one of their hosts there, because he loves the Shadowhawk. And so they were sort of like being like, has anyone checked on Denim now that, this article's out? And then Denim replied, and this is the feeling, and I'm totally behind him on this. I'm aware it's a bad mech. That just makes the victory all the sweeter when I win with one.
There you go.
I know for our Creator Proclamations episode, you submitted a proclamation, which is bad mechs are the best mechs. And I can really connect to that because the real universe, when you work in projects, when you work in whatever, you can see how things go sideways. The best intentions, and all of a sudden there's scope creep. There's just look at us designing the bunker, for example. like things can get crazy in realistic situations. And that to me makes the product have that much more character, that much more personality. When the platonic ideal is the Shadowhawk and when it's not the Timberwolf. And I love that the Timberwolf is an amazingly beautiful mech. And I love that mech. But I think if you had to choose which mech was more the platonic ideal, I think that the Shadowhawk is more in line with what the universe is. And the only reason the Timberwolf even works in the universe is because it also represents how different the clans are. So there's reasons for that too. It's totally valid. But I would definitely lean on what Michael said and totally connect to your love of these bad mechs. Because man, the personality and the narrative feeling that brings is just, it's vast.
Yeah. I'm always going to be rooting more for the mech warrior who's in a bad mech in a novel than I am for Alaric and his Savage Wolf. Like, I am unimpressed, Alaric. You're in a crazy, stupid mech that's got the best and latest tech. Try doing that in Akoshi and then get back to me.
Totally.
This is sort of springing to mind here, and you're allowed to say no comment, but I'm curious, how do you feel about the revived love for perhaps the archetypical bad mech, the urban mech?
So that's one that I haven't done yet because it seems too obvious. And while I it wouldn't. Everybody loves it so much that I kind of, when I do come for it, and I'm coming for it, I'm coming for all of them. I want it to be special in some way, and I haven't figured out a way of making that special. But to better answer your question, I have always hated the urban mech, and I continue to hate the urban mech.
It's almost not cool to root for the urban mech. Like, I don't know, I feel like I'm almost like a hipster urban mech lover. Like, ugh, do I really want to root for this? Everyone loves urban mechs now.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they're kind of cute.
I liked urban mechs before they were
They're
cool.
just kind of like weird round droid things that are way too slow. The thing that I never liked about the urban mech is literally it's just too slow. Like, it's taking that badness of you're way too slow for a light mech and you have, I guess, good enough guns. But it's just so uncomfortably slow. It's like you have to wait for it to do anything. No, thank you. I have things to do today. This game has already gone on long enough.
All right, Urban Mech, you're on notice, but not today.
To me, the urban mech has always felt like, what are those in RoboCop? There's, RoboCop, and there's the other less smart machines, those ones that sort of look like cars. I forget what they're called. But whatever those RoboCop other robots are that are not RoboCop, the urban mechs give me the same vibe of those. And to me, I find them both endearing and lovable.
Okay.
They're both fun little derpy guys.
You can love your urban mech. I'm never going to field an urban mech by choice.
By choice? Are you participating in the global campaign initiative?
I could be convinced, I suppose, but it's far less likely if you force me to use an urban mech.
All right, Michael, put a note. If your name is Sean
Gotta
Murray
get invested
on
first.
Mission
9.
3, you are only fielding urban mechs. Custom modifier for Sean.
I only have 2 urban mech
put
minis,
that in the
and
log.
I didn't even paint them.
You're going to have to
They'll
field
just add to the aesthetic.
I'll let you use a penny.
Okay.
It's like same circular shape.
About
yeah.
the same speed.
You know that our podcast is focused on mistakes because, frankly, Michael doesn't pay attention to the rules.
Yeah, I'm just a big dummy.
Huge dummy.
It's a big dum-dum. I don't know how rules
Big
work.
Dum-dum. Have you ever made a mistake when doing a bad mech analysis or write-up? Have you ever bungled a bad mech article, in your opinion?
No.
You're just as bad as me, Sean. That's how I feel too. You need a Michael.
I think
I'm sure the community does plenty of fact checking for you.
If you the thing I've learned most about doing this job is if I ever make a mistake, I will immediately be called out in the comments. And but I don't think I've ever made a mistake in an analysis for a mech. I think I have stretched definitions of bad mechs pretty far. The Stone Rhino is the one that comes up for me a lot because it's a 100-ton mech. It is a standard engine clan mech, which is technically, I think, better than the XL engine assault mechs for any clanners because you survive longer. Your job is to be the tank, and now you're tankier. But the Stone Rhino in particular already has crazy armament, crazy armor. How could it possibly be bad? And I made the argument that it's bad in lore because commanders are not willing to sacrifice it in a very similar way to how commanders were unwilling to sacrifice their battleships in World War I. I think it's like the Dreadnought effect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a stretch. So I think this is the furthest I ever stretched for any bad mech, and that one probably got a lot of, maybe even started the campaign to have the bad mech series renamed. But I still stand by it. It's bad because commanders refuse to use it. Ergo, it's not a worthwhile weapon, so it's bad.
Interesting.
I'll accept it. That sounds valid to me. All right, you heard it here. Every word Sean's ever written on
is
bad
gospel.
mechs. True and correct. Do you wear like a hat of infallibility when you're writing bad mechs?
Holy poop! And can I get one?
No. Can I get one? I would like one.
Oh man,
lobby SARNA.
I do consider myself an expert in bad mechs, so I don't think I need to have the accoutrements of it. I can just do it. It's just a thing that comes to me.
Fair enough.
So one thing I've noticed when reading the articles is the bad mech reactions. Some people take them to heart a lot. From my perspective, you're really playful with these articles. You're really analytical. You're not necessarily saying, don't field this mech. I mean, you aren't saying don't field this mech. You aren't saying that this mech serves no purpose. You're very clear at labeling the purpose, but still, I tend to notice when reading those comments, sometimes people get up in arms about it a little bit. Why do you think that is? It just feels like, to me, it just feels like people are not getting it, man. It just feels like they're taking it a little bit too rough. Do you know why? Why is this happening, Sean? Why is the world this way?
You pretty much said it. I know for a fact that people sometimes don't get it because they will leave a comment saying that I'm out to lunch for whatever reason. And it's very clear that they haven't read the article because, like, they'll provide reasons why the mech is good that I debunked in the article or something like that. I just think that a lot of people don't like mechs being called bad. Maybe it's their favorite mech. Maybe they take it personally.
Mhm.
It is a deliberately insightful way to describe something. And the reason for that is obviously to create a conversation around that mech. And I think sometimes people feel like they're being called out for that. And they
Mhm.
are going to leave their opinion, sometimes rudely, sometimes nicely. And I take it all in stride
Yeah.
when people come to these kinds of Bad Mech series because it's just something that, you know, the internet's kind of an angry place in general. And if I'm going to be
Mhm.
putting myself out there with an opinion, I expect to be bombarded with some negative opinions. A lot of the time, it is
Yeah.
going to be constructive criticism or just flat out agreement. Like, I had plenty
Mhm.
of comments on the Shadowhawk saying, yeah, this is a bad mech. I'm surprised it didn't come here sooner. And then, you know, when the mechs that are saying, I'm crazy, this is no way a bad mech, it's like, that's fine. It's just your opinion, man.
Just your
You know,
opinion, man.
and maybe, you know, part of it is like the word bad, you know, bad can mean a lot of things. And you're not saying that like it's morally wrong to like these mechs
Hmm.
or like you're an idiot for using them. They're not
Yeah,
good.
they're not good. And like the game system kind of balances these bad mechs anyway. Like yes, the Charger is bad, but in Alpha Strike at least,
Mhm.
it's also 18 points. That's cheaper than most light
Mhm.
mechs. So sure, it's bad, but
Yeah.
when you like inevitably lose it, it's fine. It was only 18 points. You've got plenty of other mechs to keep fighting with. So like
Mhm.
they're bad, but again, the game just balances everything out anyway. So use the bad mechs. They're balanced most of the time.
Yeah. And enjoy it. Relish the badness. Wallow in it.
I am putting my money where my mouth is. I am making a bad mechs company that is exclusively
Ooh.
bad mechs. I'm going to see how well it does.
I do. Possibly not
Possibly not.
well, but the victories will be all that
Exactly.
sweeter.
So I've got Chargers. I've got the Chameleon, which is another one that got a little bit of heat for. Hatchet Man, Fireball. Oh, I do have a Grasshopper, but it's the bad one, the GR5J. That's the one that they decided, hey, let's lose all these medium lasers, throw in an SRM2, and that's going to be better, I think. It wasn't.
Don't get Michael started on SRMs.
How often do you dip into variants for bad mechs? Like, you know, is one variant enough to make a bad mech? Do they have to be mostly bad or?
I feel like if the core, the variant that you think of when you think of the mech is bad. Like, I haven't done, well, the Grasshopper is a good example. Like, I haven't done that as part of the Bad Mech series because I think the Grasshopper is a great mech. It's heat neutral, it deals a lot of damage at a reasonable range, it has a lot of armor, it's fairly mobile for its size. There's really nothing bad I could say about the GR5H Grasshopper. So
Mhm.
diving into the 5J and being like, the 5J is terrible, ergo the Grasshopper's a bad mech, that just doesn't feel right. But the Shadowhawk, for example, the 2H, that that is
The
the Shadowhawk.
Shadowhawk.
So I can say the Shadowhawk is bad. Or if like I'll bring the Cougar back out, like every Cougar is basically still a glass cannon, ergo the Cougar is bad.
So was there anything else you wanted to talk about Bad Mechs? Talk about Bad Mechs? I guess you have a lot of Bad Mechs to talk about. There's infinite amounts of Bad Mech content.
There is not an infinite amount of Bad Mech content to come. There are a limited number of Bad Mechs, and CGL is not making. I mean, they are making more mechs, but most of them. I mean, some of them are a little bit questionable, but I don't think they want to make another Charger 1A1, which is just hot garbage.
They've got a better handle on like how to mechanically make interesting, useful mechs that have a place on the tabletop. So we risk the Bad Mech well running dry.
The objective for CGL is always to grow the franchise, grow the player base, and it's hard to get a new player excited about a hot steaming pile of garbage. I think that it's important to have Bad Mechs in there because you can't know the beauty and triumph of the Mad Cat Mark IV unless you know about the Mad Cat Mark III. We have gotten less Bad Mechs. I do wish they would include a few, like one really bad, truly awful mech in the ill clan recognition guides. I think that would be really cool. I mean, they've brought back previous Bad Mechs like the Whitworth and Shadowhawk and whatever, but I want a new mech that's real bad.
Yeah, we need fresh fodder. We need to do a better job lobbying CGL too.
Like a really
Bad Mechs matter.
Bad Mechs do matter. I think it's also kind of it's difficult to make an argument why a Bad Mech would exist in the future because they know about mechs now, and clan tech is kind of standard, and the technology base for generally everywhere is very good. Why would you make a bad mech?
But why would you make a bad anything? The world is full of bad things, but we still make bad things.
Well, okay, fair, but like for an established going concern, like we don't. You know what? That's not true. We do make bad cars. Occasionally, a crazy person comes along. I'm not going to name names, and makes a trapezoid out of sheet metal and says this is a good car. I think we need something like that. Something like that in the BattleTech universe.
More weird esoteric ones. What's that weird mech? What's the one that has an internal combustion engine?
Like the forestry mechs?
No, there's a battle mech. There's a battle mech out there which has an internal combustion engine. It was a project of like some sort of eccentric CEO wanted to build a mech, couldn't get fusion engines, built it with an internal combustion engine. You need stuff like that. You need the stories for why something weird and probably bad.
Man, that's a level of bad I'm not sure I want to associate with.
That's the level of bad we live and breathe, good sir. And you're associating with us right now. Entrapment.
Get it in your Bad Mech land.
I feel like that's just a little too diesel punk for BattleTech. Okay, maybe not. We did live through MechWarrior Dark Age, and there were indeed like exhaust pipes coming out of a lot of mechs.
Dude, how much cooler would it be if it wasn't called MechWarrior Dark Age, but it was called MechWarrior Diesel Age? Yeah.
Basically the same thing.
Everyone's flying around in spacecraft powered by diesel. The players would have rioted even more than they already did.
I mean, they didn't really riot. They just didn't show up.
It was a quiet rioting. All right. Well, thanks so much for talking to us. Was there anything else you wanted to share about Bad Mechs or SARNA news?
We're going to keep doing Bad Mechs until we do eventually run out. Like, my list is not infinitely long, but we certainly have enough Bad Mechs to cover the rest of the year, maybe even 2026. And we'll see about 2027. But occasionally I will just go through TROs and pick out something that says, yeah, this is pretty bad. And when we do eventually run out of Bad Mechs, I will think of something else to talk.
Well, go everyone, all our listeners, go check out SARNA. You've probably already checked out SARNA. Check out SARNA news. Check out Bad Mechs. There's a whole back catalog of bad mechs for you to check out, and go read some of Sean's beautiful writing.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
On to the next segment. This is Professor Michael with Your Sphere Today. A new mech designated the Wolk made a splash in Solaris 7 tabloids this week after hitting the arena piloted by star jockey Kelly Metz. The Wolk is the latest design from the Vinning Engineering and Salvage team, a popular boutique Solaris manufacturer, best known for their clan-inspired Jackal, which was even fielded on battlefields against clan forces. Unlike their past mechs, however, the Wolk seems to be a bit too experimental, with crowds describing it as very strange and pretty ugly. It mounts 4 ER medium lasers in the head and the cockpit in the torso, which one fan described as kinda weird, and another asked, did they install it upside down? Also in the torso is an SRM-4 launcher, which one mech tech for the opponent stated, I don't know, I wouldn't want to be sitting next to all those missiles. Rounding out the weapon systems are 2 lances, each mounted on the ends of one of the arms, a layout that was apparently awkward and difficult to use, with announcers at one point asking, how is Metz supposed to swing those things with those tiny arms? BEST released a statement along with the promotional flyer for the new model, which confirmed while there were some teething issues with any new mech, they are standing by the Volk as it is, quote, fast as hell and can take more pounding than most assaults, a claim which is sure to be tested in the arenas over the months to come. Now on to more of Your Sphere Today.
Secondary objective, rule check discovery segment. Initiating.
Hello, everyone, and we are back with our rule check discovery segment. And you know what? We're going to let Sean lead the segment this day because he has a few rule mistakes. You know, he's been playing for a while. It happens to the best of us. Right, Sean?
I haven't played for super long. I mean, I play a lot of the video games, but I don't play a lot of the tabletop. But I mean, that's maybe why.
Oh, so you're saying that the only reason you made a mistake is because you're new? Is that what you're saying? Are you saying that there's no reason to justify my mistakes? Are you coming onto my podcast and slandering me, Sean?
Couching my mistakes in inexperience so that I take less flack. Is maybe
Michael,
That's
should
okay.
I be
you
offended?
can also make mistakes when you're experienced.
okay.
Ask Nathan. All right, so tell us about your mistakes.
So Alpha Strike is still easier than classic BattleTech, but for some reason in my head, when I just started playing Alpha Strike with my brother, he's kind of the big reason that I got back into the tabletop version of BattleTech. He kind of kept up with it for years and years and years, but we hadn't actually sat down to play Alpha Strike, even though it had been out for a while until I think last year or the year before. I forget. Anyway, whatever reason I had it in my head that the cover rules benefited the mech that was sort of in like what I said a hull down position, which is basically it's not a real thing, so this don't quote me on this. Well, there is a hull down thing, but it's completely different. What I thought it was is once your mech is behind cover, but like immediately behind cover, like a hill. Yeah, pushed up against a hill. It's size 2, so like you can make the reasonable argument that the only thing visible on that mech is like, you know, torso up. But like that mech, from its perspective, if it's shooting at anything downrange, like sure, there's a hill in front of you, but it's not blocking any of your guns. It's not blocking any of your vision. Why would it incur a penalty to you trying to hit something else? So like a lot of the early games were me abusing this mechanic, which is not true. In Alpha Strike, if you have cover, the enemy has cover. So it's equal in both ways for most situations.
Interesting.
And I may have won a few games this way until we figured it out. The other thing that I screwed up is jumping rules. Now, this one was simple. jumping in standard jumping rules in Alpha Strike is you get the person who jumps has +2 to hit something, whereas the guy trying to hit you is +1. So it's easier to hit the jumping mech and harder for the guy in the jumping mech to hit anything else. I had that in reverse. So it was always good to be a jumping mech because you would just always incur a penalty on your opponents to hit you, and your mech, although also incurred a penalty, was slightly less, ergo your dice will on average hit more often. So you should just jump everywhere. And that was also incorrect.
Those are both super interesting. Having like I've never played Alpha Strike, but we've played a fair amount of Classic, and for that second one, that is more or less a problem that certain mechs have, or certain perks have, special pilot abilities have in Classic, where usually most mechs that have like sort of old school jumping ranges, jumping is a bigger penalty for you than it is for the mech trying to shoot you. But if you can jump far enough, then you flip that around. And now it's actually more advantageous for you being targeted than it is for you shooting.
There are mech abilities, not necessarily pilot abilities, but special keywords for mechs in Alpha Strike that will change those values. There can be a situation, I think it's with improved jump jets on certain mechs, where you will either have an equal penalty to your opponent to hit, or sometimes you will actually have a lesser penalty than your opponent is trying to hit you. I think there's a variant of Spider that I think it incurs like a +3 penalty to your opponent, but you're still dealing with the +2. It's technically better for you to be jumping around literally everywhere. It's just that neither of you are statistically likely to hit each other.
Yes. And for the other one, sort of how you thought it works is kind of more how it works for Classic, where everyone basically, you only get cover if you're pushed up against something, and that attacks against you from that direction have cover, and unless they're pushed up against some cover, they don't get any cover. So
that's probably where I got it from.
Yeah, probably. You're just so smart. You just remembered all the Classic rules. And,
I mean, I did play a few games of Classic before my Alpha Strike Renaissance, so I was probably like, oh, this is just an analog to BattleTech, the tabletop game, and this is how the rules work. I need to read my core rulebook again.
This is 1,000% a mistake Nathan and I would make if we played Alpha Strike.
Speak for yourself, Michael. So I think the impacts of jumping are really clear. Mechs just leapfrogging around the battlefield with a rule mistake like that. But for the cover rule, how did that really impact your games, and how did changing? You said you won a lot more using it, but how did it actually impact the games for your opponent when it was actually played out on the table?
It made it so that it was always a benefit to sit and snipe. So, especially because my brother liked to try and play like highly mobile games. If you're playing clans, you always want to have like a really mobile kind of force. So I would just sit back with like a supernova and just park it behind a hill, and it would just snipe everything because it's raised and it gets additional cover bonus, which it should not have. Whereas it's just sniping everything and standing still, which is another thing you can do in Alpha Strike. If you declare you stand still, you can get a bonus to hit stuff because you're not moving.
And then you mitigated any penalties for, not being evasive because you're behind cover.
Exactly. But it did make things a little boring and not fun. I do like playing the correct rules much better, believe it or not, because it forces mobility. Forces is perhaps the wrong word, but it encourages you to always be moving to ensure that you have the optimal sight lines, that you always have dice to roll, as opposed to the simple tactic of just find hills, park behind them. Because the game is more about ensuring that you're rolling more dice, and the dice you're rolling are of better quality. And the best way to do that is also to ensure that your mechs are always kind of moving and maneuvering to have all those really good dice rolls.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I will say, which might make me sound like a 5-year-old, movement is fun.
Yeah.
And like just camping and sniping, like that's cool. You're fulfilling a purpose, but you're actually you sort of screw yourself out of a phase. So it's like moving around the board, determining your strategic position and stuff like that. That to me is a big part of, classic Battletech or Alpha Strike. And if you're incentivizing things away from that, then I think it's going to make the play experience a little less exciting. I can feel that change. I can feel it.
And you have way more options when you realize that you could just go balls to the wall and bring the biggest things that you can possibly think of. And so like ignoring cover entirely, if all you're doing is ensuring that you always have a sight line with someone, your bulk will just win the day.
Cool.
By sort of playing this the correct way, you're making sure that it's a game about maneuvering. That's the core of the game is lining up, getting that advantage, knife fighting, versus, like you say, just lining your mechs up and rolling dice until one person wins.
Yeah, and you can still do that, of course. It's just rarely is that the most interesting way to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the lesson of the day is, if you want the most interesting way to play with bad mechs and run around a lot.
Yeah. All assassins and cicadas.
All cicadas. Oh man. That's gonna be a fun and quick game.
Two most important things. Fun and quick.
Well, honestly, Sean, thank you for sharing those rule mistakes. They make a lot of sense. They resonate with rule mistakes we both made in Classic as well. And I think I really feel the impacts.
And thank you for allowing me to wallow in my own inadequacies.
Oh, well, you're always welcome to come to our podcast and wallow.
BungleTech, where we wallow in inadequacies.
That can be season 3's slogan, man. Love it. Love it. And I'm excited to continue reading your news articles, your Bad Mechs articles, continue collaborating, and excited for more rule mistakes to come, especially the more experienced you get. Those are the rule mistakes I want to hear the most.
I'm going to start busting out aerospace rules soon. I'm sure I'm going to screw those up.
All right, everyone. That is that. On to our next segment.
This is Professor Michael presenting The Sphere We Live In. Another famous company born from the Commonwealth's periphery security initiatives is the infamous Group W. Formed as a battalion of MechWarriors piloting their own family machines, and led by the enigmatic Rick Daring, Group W established itself as an expert unit of pirate hunters, patrolling the periphery of Lyran space and eliminating at least one recorded pirate enclave. Their success and strong funding led to the unit being contracted by the Lyran Commonwealth Armed Forces as a garrison on the front of the clan invasion, and later to defend the St. Ives Compact. While both of these deployments were ultimately unsuccessful, the group nonetheless proved themselves loyal, professional, and brave. Most recently, the unit has been serving as a peacekeeping force on the world of Lyon, where they have reportedly been effective and brutal in putting down the local riots from anti-Kurita protesters. Though not always glamorous, there is always demand for police and peacekeeping contracts, and for many former pirate hunters like Group W, the opportunity for stable garrison duty in the Inner Sphere is appealing for those accustomed to the ruthlessness of shock operations against irregular forces and deployments to populated urban centers. Now you know about the sphere we live in.
And that brings us to an end of another deployment of BungleTech. A quick reminder before we wrap up. The first mission of the Global Campaign Initiative has officially been released. You can find it on our Patreon linked in the show description notes. If you haven't had a chance to register your table yet, no worries. There's still plenty of time. Although keep in mind, you only have 5 weeks from this episode release date to submit your Mission 1 After Action report, if you want to influence future missions in the global campaign, that is. Spread the word, MechWarriors. We want you to join us on this adventure. We've already received a ton of radical submissions, and spoiler alert, next month's episode will be dedicated to reviewing them. As always, a big thank you to all our current Patreon supporters. Your support makes initiatives like the Global Campaign sustainable and fuels our passion to grind on forward. Until next time, MechWarriors, good fortunes on the battlefield. Selah.
All podcast objectives complete. Podcast shutdown sequence initiated.